like to welcome all of you once again to our Board Leadership Forum, our Lunch and Learns. I would like to thank you for your continued registration to these events. We'll talk about a little bit more, but this is the last weekly session. We will continue these on the third Wednesday of each month, at least through Christmas. So we hope that you keep that on your calendar and watch that. Once again, I am Gary Sechrist with KASB Leadership, and always happy to introduce my partner in the Lunch and Learn, Sam Blasi, who is an attorney with KASB. We also have some KASB folks kind of hanging around. I like to use the term lurking in the background, and sometimes they assist us with questions in the chat, so that's much appreciated. Today's session, I believe, is a great session to end our weekly, in that we have three outstanding board members that are all graduates of our 2019 Leadership for Tomorrow's class. And listening to the questions that you folks have had throughout this time period, these board members have lived it with you, and we wanted them to have an opportunity to discuss how they've attempted to keep the main thing during the pandemic. They obviously have some leeway on how they wish to go about that. We obviously wish that you would and encourage you to ask questions of your colleagues, these guest speakers. Today with us is Jerdine Coleman. She happens to be a board member in the Manhattan-Ogden School District. We have Miranda Dinkle, who is a board member in Fredonia, and Dan Patterson, who is a board member in the Lakin School District. So we have a 2A, 3A type of school district all the way up to a larger 6A district. We feel like we have representation from different portions of our state. So with that said, we're going to go alphabetical order so these three board members don't think I favor one over the other. But with that said, I'm very happy to introduce Jerdine Coleman, who will lead us off. And once again, she is from the Manhattan-Ogden district. So Mrs. Coleman, it is all yours.
Thank you so much, Gary, for the invitation to come today and speak to everyone. As Gary mentioned, I'm from Manhattan-Ogden School District, and I really wanted to talk today about our transition. We really started with a heavy focus as a board on COVID-related changes and issues, which I'm sure most of you did. We actually had our very first virtual board meeting after we closed schools, and it was a 4-hour board meeting. And I remember after getting off of that meeting thinking, there is no way we can keep up this pace for the rest of the year. And so we quickly decided to shift gears and talk about how we could structure our board meetings differently, because COVID is not going away, and it is a significant impact on our district, but we knew we still had to do the normal business that was a part of our business calendar. So we started with COVID updates being a part of our superintendent's report, and that was taking hours and hours and hours. And so we decided to give it a special place on our agenda. And sometimes that meant having it be at the very beginning of our agenda, and sometimes it meant having it at the end, but that really helped the people who were going to speak to us to have some dedicated time. And we also structured how we were going to address COVID issues around some significant domains. So we talked about how does it impact staff, how is it impacting instruction, and so that really helped us to keep the time that we were spending talking about COVID-related problems in the district down. I also think that having this adaptive challenge forced us to move forward faster than we may have planned to on some things, but it actually turned out to be a good thing. So we were in the process of transitioning to one-to-one across our district, which is about 6,300 students. And we were maybe halfway through the grades with that. And the option for the additional federal funding through the CARES Act allowed us to fast track the acquisition of a lot of devices. And it also allowed us to dabble in providing internet service to families as well. And so even though we had planned to do this technology implementation long range, this challenge made us do that faster. And I would say if you polled our staff, they probably would say it wasn't the most efficient process. But we are at a point now where all of our families have devices in their hands. And a lot of our buildings now also have internet access available out of the building into the surrounding parking lots and the surrounding areas. We were able to also do internet access updates as well, which probably would not have happened had we not had to shift gears with COVID. Let's see, I also wanted to share that normally when we have our administrative team come forward with purchases or changes, they're always supported by board goals, and that didn't change. So there's a spot on each request that we get from administrators that asks which board goal, which strategic plan area are you focusing on, whether that's curriculum related or social emotional development related, et cetera. So we still, even though we made a swift purchase of technology, we still asked our administrators to tie that to our board goals because we didn't want to be making decisions on the fly that would seem out of left field or unrelated to not only to our district, but also just to families and the community as well, because as many of you know, technology purchases are always big purchases. And so we really wanted to be able to justify why we've made this decision to spend a significant amount of dollars in such a short amount of time. And without, I would say, probably with less discussion than we normally would have had, because we knew that the need for technology was imminent and that the entire country was looking for technology. And so we had to get our name on the list to acquire devices and cases and things like that. But we always asked for justification from administrators. And I don't think that that was hard for them because, like I said, this was part of our long-term planning. It was just a faster implementation of those plans. I think the most significant impact for our board that I've seen has been on our personal physical and mental health. I think our board meetings have been just more stressful in general because we are all stressed out in our own lives with trying to manage how our own children are learning, how our jobs have changed, how our spouses are available or not available because of their job requirements. And then also the weight that we're carrying of making these ginormous decisions that none of us ever anticipated having to make. I mean, I think how many people thought they would ever have to close schools as a school board member? The answer is none. So the weight of having to make these decisions and having no precedent, having no one with any experience whatsoever has been hard for us, I think, as a board. And also because of the way that the virus, the timing of the virus's impact on schools made it such that we had 3 months of getting to know our new board members. And that has also made just becoming a cohesive unit much harder. We all know that we can connect with people virtually, but it's not the same. Even just those small talk that you have before a meeting starts, or just being able to check in on someone, that doesn't happen when you're on a Zoom call. Everyone's muted until the call starts, and everyone is muted unless they're talking. So I think that that has been a barrier that we're still working through. And now that we're back in person, I definitely have noticed more of us trying to build relationships as a board and really trying to bring in our 2 new board members to help them feel as part of a team. I also think—
Can I interrupt? We have a question
yeah,
that is specific to something you said early.
Yeah.
He has asked, wishes to know in your board, what type of participation did you allow from the community or others And also, did you allow parents to participate in the decision making, or how did you get those? And also, there's a lot of questions in this one. Do you have any issues with teachers just wearing out, or any of them resigning as a result of some of this? So you're seeing a lot there, and
Yeah, sure. So initially, we did not have community input except for the health department. So that was our first connection with the community, was through our local health department. And our district actually falls in 2 counties, and so we went with the most restrictive county when we tried to make decisions early on, and we're still doing that now. We have made a lot of decisions from administrators' recommendations. As we've gotten back to having teachers on contract, we've done some informal surveys through, actually through our NEA rep. She's been phenomenal with gathering teacher feedback. And now we're at a point where we're soliciting parent feedback as well through an online survey. So initially it was kind of like just grabbing the reins and trying to steer. And now that we have control a little bit more, we're able to loosen up a little bit and start to make small adjustments with getting more feedback. I think if you get too much feedback early on, you don't know where to go, and it's hard to make decisions. And then what were the last questions? Oh, you're muted, Gary, sorry.
Have you had any teachers, obviously some teacher burnout, but have any teachers resigned as a result of some of the stress or the issues that you've had to deal with?
Absolutely. We had some resignations that were early on, and I think as we've gone on, we've seen more and more of those, and we have spoken to those at our board meetings and just noticing. I said at our last meeting, whenever our agenda packet comes out, the first place I go to is resignations, because I'm anxious to see how are the decisions that are being made at the top impacting the boots on the ground. And for some, they thought they could feel comfortable and confident in working. We're also a district doing hybrid learning. I should have mentioned that early on, but some people just aren't comfortable with the hybrid learning model, and they're maybe not comfortable with how we're executing it so far, and they just don't have the ability to hang on until we figure it out. We've had some people who had planned to retire at the end of the year submit early retirement or leaving October or at the end of this month. So yes, our staffing levels have absolutely been impacted.
Dean, there also is another question from a board member in a district close to your area. But the several questions once again is, how have you managed community comment? I know your board has always been great at listening to public comment. I've seen petitions and other parent-driven actions on Facebook in regards to your district doing hybrid. Yeah. How has your board managed all of that?
Yeah, so initially we did online public comment, and we didn't receive a ton of public comments when we were virtual. And now that we're back face-to-face, we do have some groups of parents that show up pretty consistently with some concerns about hybrid learning. And we allow them their space to speak. I think there's a balance of wanting people to feel heard and listened to. And so our goal is to allow people that space to be heard and to be listened to. And I think underneath some of the words that we're hearing is fear and anxiety and care for their student. And we have to constantly remind ourselves that that's what we're hearing, regardless of the words that are being spoken, because sometimes people can be super hurtful because they have the floor to speak. And so we are constantly bringing it back to their concern for their child's learning, and we need to make sure that we are addressing their concerns through our actions. And so I think we heard probably two board meetings worth of concerns about hybrid learning. And so we had a work session on what can we do differently with hybrid learning. And that involved having KSB come in and facilitate a conversation as a board for us to say, what is it that we want out of hybrid that we don't have now, to give our superintendent and administrators some guidance for if we're going to stay in hybrid, this is what it needs to look like. And I think it was helpful. The feedback that we got after that work session was that people felt like they understood what our priorities were. And the superintendent also agreed that he thought he had more of a direction from us as a board.
Thank you, Mrs. Coleman.
Yeah.
I do need to get to the second.
Oh, no, I'm done.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, could you, I know it might be an estimate for you, how many, what's your enrollment in your school district?
I think we're at about 6,300, and we have like 900 elementary students who are remote, and maybe we have like in secondary it might be like 200 or 300 remote.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm happy to, thank you very much, Mrs. Coleman. I'm happy to introduce our new speaker, Miranda Dinkle, who is from Fredonia. And Miranda, if you can remember to maybe give us an idea of how big your school district is, but I'm happy to introduce Miranda, so the time is now yours.
All right, thank you for having me. I'm from Fredonia. Our school is about 700 students, so we are significantly smaller. We had the benefit of our board president at the time of the COVID was also our public health officer. So she really, yeah, there was a lot of benefit there. So we were pretty forward thinking. 2 days before the governor had actually officially shut down our schools, she had came and said, I think we need to close, spring break's coming up, let's see what happens. And so we were on the cutting edge of that. And that really helped, especially during that crisis time, as we could really focus on the teaching and the need of our students, because we had her wealth of information as far as COVID and what needed to be done there. And we all kind of trusted that process with her. I will say that we didn't take on any new board members with this election. So that was also beneficial to our school, because we all have that trust within our board for the main part. We had actually been working on our goals and strategic plan starting in December, and we kind of went forward with that through COVID. So a lot of things tied, and we did our goal planning a little different. I think every district probably has their own way to go about goals. But we did where the board really sat down and came up with the goals, and then our administrators were able to then take the lead and come back with, these are our objectives to meet your goal, and these are the metrics in which we're going to measure the goal. And so then when it came time to start looking at reopening, our administrators were really, the goals were right there with them. And so while we never said this is our goal and this is which direction we're going, when you look at what we've achieved through this with our goals, you see so many of them align. The first one I was going to show, I was proud of this. Having been on the LFT last year, we toured so many redesigned schools that had outdoor classrooms. And that has been something that we've talked about, that we wanted. Not only does it help academically, but when it also makes your facility look fabulous. And so we had outdoor classrooms up within, I would say these were up about after the first week of school. And these are at all 3 of our campuses. Now they have tables and chairs that the students move in and out. I live 4 blocks from the school, the high school, and half the time I see teachers taking advantage of these spaces. They're outside with kids. So I see a lot of redesign concept that's really quickly been driven, because also it aligns with COVID, trying to get kids outside and away from each other. We also used a lot of CARES Act money to further our devices and get more devices because, of course, this spring while we were in crisis mode, we realized that we were short on providing devices to families. So we have gotten devices, we have gotten hotspots. Since we're in a rural area, our biggest challenge for our students is access to internet. And we have families that have no internet access at all in a rural area. And so we have hotspots now and ways to make sure that they can get online. We also kind of are aligning with that academic preparation, Canvas. This spring we had teachers using Canvas and Google Classroom and Class Dojo and so many different applications that it was overwhelming for teacher or parents to manage their classrooms for their students, especially if you had different age class. So in June, our administrators came to us at a board meeting and said that they really felt that a blueprint of Canvas would be in the best interest of our students and their families, and asked us to make an approval of that. And it was a lot of extra work for our teachers. I cannot stress that enough because some of them already had set up on other platforms. But from what I've seen in my students already this year, we're in school, but we are accessing this, so we're ready to go to remote. It's been day and night between what was happening this spring and what's going on now. So that's a great outcome of that. We also, let's see, where else are we at? So another one of our goals was recruiting and retaining high quality employees. And so that is probably one of the biggest challenges, as somebody touched on earlier, the resignations of teachers. It's a really hard time to be in education, not just for teachers, for paras and all of our support staff. And so we have, when we went through our budget this year, we allocated the greatest amount we could towards salary increases to try to maintain employees. And then our administrator has done a great job of really reaching out. And again, those surveys, where's your stress level at? Are you ready for this year? Do you need assistance? And so that's been, I hope, helpful to our teachers and staff. And then I think being a parent, parents are a lot more understanding of how much stress they're under this year. So they're trying to be more patient than maybe we were in April or May of last spring. Let's see, where else? We did have 2 early retirements due to some health issues within their family, and I completely respect that. And I think that all districts are going to it's going to be tough for all of us to maintain high level of teachers in the next year or so, because I think we're still a ways from being out of this. And so that's going to be really something we're going to have to focus on as a board this year, is maintaining that and making sure that we're giving the proper tools and strategies to our teachers.
Miranda, we do have a couple of questions for you if you are
Okay.
asking those at you now. They're from 2 different individuals, but they're very similar in that, how have your parents responded to the changes, such as the outdoor classrooms? Change can be scary to the community. And then another question, will you have enough spacing when you need to go back inside after you no longer are able to use your outdoor classrooms?
So I think, at least here, we were able to go right into in-person learning. We have, I want to say, roughly 12 families that are doing remote. They're of younger kids, and they are not fans of their children having to wear masks all day, and so they're doing the remote. So parents were mostly just excited to send their kids back to school. If I want to be really honest. So they've been pretty in support of the changes. Now the masks have been hard. That was probably our single hardest trial through this was we had our plan ready. Our plan doesn't require masks. Again, I'm in a very rural area. I believe our community has had one case so far. So what's happening here is different than anywhere else. And I felt that our plan that had been created was very efficient, that looked at our student population and their needs. When the governor mandated a one-size-fits-all approach, that was pretty tough, and parents had a lot of displeasure in that. And I've faced a lot of hard questions about why do we have to do this? Do we really have to do this? And there's even a school district that is very close to me that is not following it. And I found out today they have a teacher that just tested positive. So the parents, it's a tricky thing too. And I usually just try to tell them, I understand it. I'm not in favor of a lot of the things that we're having to do, but it's what's getting our kids back in school and back to sports. And so that's worked really well. I see we have another question about the spacing on the outdoor classrooms. So when I have to say one more time, our administrators are great. We have had the same administrator team for, I want to say our superintendent and high school principal have been here for 5 years, and our elementary 3 years. So they've come together very well. And they spent a lot of time this summer planning. So our elementary classrooms had been assigned the seating so that there would be as much space as possible between kids. Teachers had to get away from that flexible seating that everyone finds so popular in the redesign concept, and back to something that took up less space. But they can move in and out and maintain their 6 feet of distance usually. Having worked with the county health department, we understand that, especially like elementary school kids, if we get a case in a classroom, that classroom's most likely going to be quarantined because you can't maintain that social distance. But I would say in our high school, they're doing a fairly good job of as good as you can with high schoolers, right? So, any other questions?
No, there's not. And we're going to move to our third speaker, but hopefully you'll hang
Perfect.
with us. We are sure hoping for more questions at the conclusion. So thank you very much, Mrs. Dinkle.
Thank you.
I'd like to pass the torch to Dan Patterson, who is a board member and, well, we would call it Western Kansas. He may not, but in West Central, Southwest Kansas, Lakin. Mr. Patterson.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, we're out here in God's country, and I call it that because no one else seems to want it, but here we are. We were very, very fortunate when all this really hit and started, and the reason I say we're really, really fortunate is, first off, we had very low case numbers out here. It took us a while to catch up to everyone else, and we're still working on that. Hopefully we never catch everyone else as far as numbers of cases, but we got a new superintendent this year and a new high school principal. And so with that, it was much easier to focus on goals, expectations, getting to know each other, things like that. That's been our main focus. And then I saw Dr. Stutzman was on here earlier. So the poor guy, most of the stuff that comes with COVID, we just dump it in his lap and say, here it is. It's really not that bad, but he's very calm about things. He has a calming effect, and that tends to keep everyone else calm about things. We're all also very fortunate because we have a very high percent of students who participate in the extracurriculars, and kids are not dumb. You just explain to them the consequences if they don't do certain things. Talking to kids, I've talked to them, and we do not require masks in our school. They are recommended, but they're not required. And it's amazing the number of kids where they're allowed to spread out and they have room to spread out. They're not wearing their masks, but they have some classrooms where there's more kids in the class. It's a smaller classroom. The kids are putting the masks on by themselves. They're not being told to. Now, if a teacher wants them to wear one, they will. It's a pretty respectful group. But as Dr. Stessman called us, we're kind of pioneerish out here. We don't like being told what to do, but and we're also very fortunate because we developed the reopening plan, and with doing that, we had 32 people involved, a couple, our admins, some teachers, 2 school board members, I think, and then the rest were all parents and community members. And they got together and they spent hours and hours and hours developing this reopening plan. And so our main goal there is just to follow the reopening plan and kind of stick to that as best we can. We know after last spring that remote learning, man, that had a drastic negative effect on learning. So we're going to do everything possible to try to avoid that at all costs, because we need kids in seats. The kids need kids in seats. And we really, our board, we've been together a few years now, and there's several subjects that we don't all agree upon, of course, like any board, but we truly value and honor each other's opinions. We're not going to agree, but we're okay with that, and we move on. But what that has allowed us to do is really let the administration focus and bring the important things with COVID to us rather than us trying to delve in and deal with it. If it's not affecting them, why are we involved with it? We let them handle it, and they've been awesome about it. But really the key to us was having new people, and that allowed us to focus on goal setting and planning. And our learning environments are very fluid. We just were told 2 days ago that there's a public health order coming, and we've always had very good communication with the health department and our administration. And the only thing that was kind of disappointing in this, I kind of wish they'd allowed the board in this, at least a couple board members or something, into this discussion, because my phone has rang for 2 days since it's been put out there. And the health department felt like too many kids were being sent home with symptoms, which a lot of them turned out to be allergies, but you never know. Were being sent home with symptoms, and the kids or parents were not going in to get tested. And once the symptoms cleared up, they sent them back. So now they sent out a public health order that if we have symptoms, if you're sent home, they contact the public health department. You have to go see a doctor. If the doctor determines that you probably need to be tested, then you are required to take a test, or you will quarantine for 10 days and be symptom free for 72 hours prior to returning to school. You can imagine that went over in the community like a lead balloon so far as the calls I'm getting. Again, no one out here, I don't think anywhere, really likes to be told what to do, but we have 0 cases in our school. We've been very fortunate, but a lot of that goes back to not only our staff and our admin doing such a great job with it. It goes back to the kids. Kids want to be in school. They want to participate in things. And I just saw that question pop up. No, that's allowed for in the reopening plan. If we have a positive case in our school, masks will be required. We will move forward at that. They will be required in whatever building that staff member or student that has it. I mean, it's all in the reopening plan, and we are going to follow that reopening plan. That's the reason you have it. If people, we have people who want to jump to phase 2, but phase 2 isn't called for because we have 0 cases in our school at this point. So I think all those things have been thought of and visited. And yes, it is a fluid reopening plan. Things can change. So we would revisit it if it was ever warranted. It hasn't been warranted, so that's not even on the top of our minds right now to revisit that. No, masks do not have to be worn.
Dan, we have another question that I'd like to ask you while I was able to get a hold. Because you at least started with a low threat of COVID, or with at least some low numbers, as your staff felt safe, and have you been able to retain your staff?
We have retained our staff, and the staff, some of them were very hesitant at the beginning, but as this has went on, they're getting more comfortable. Parents and kids, all of us were scared. We don't know what to expect, and honestly, how many of us realistically, even out here, I would say the majority of people were betting we would be closed down by October. And yet here we are, still 0 cases in our school. And that's just the quality of job that our staff, admin, and students are all doing. They do take it serious. They do. I'm proud of them. I can't believe how lucky we are to have the people we have. And as far as learning environments being fluid, I think what happened in March was a huge, huge learning curve. And fortunately, our teachers, our staff, our admins, they grabbed it by the horns, and they're a lot more prepared for next go around, if there's to be one. We're just very fortunate, tight-knit community. We're about the same size as Fredonia. We have about 700 students, and 400 or so in the elementary school. If we do have to go to remote learning, we still are going to bring K through 6. They're going to be coming into school. We will just spread them out. The county health department is okay as long as we have classes less than 15 and they're spread out.
Dan, we do have another question that pertains. Earlier you had said that you do not have a mask order within your district. I guess the tricky question here is, does your county have a mask order?
No.
Okay.
No, we do not.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Mr. Patterson? Sam, if you could advance it 2 slides, I'd sure appreciate it. So if you would see here, we've got Sam here. We've had 3 outstanding speakers, and I think what we've seen is 3 very boards that have high interest in doing what's right. They've all done it a little bit different, seems to be working for them. You have an opportunity now to ask any questions that you might have of our 3 speakers. Sam is also here to ask or answer any questions that you might have. Sam, we didn't talk about this, but if there's anything that you feel necessary to bring up, you might maybe fill some time while we're waiting for some questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and say that I think our speakers did a fantastic job of kind of giving the sort of boots on the ground strategy and effectuation of these plans. As you can see, sort of no plan is exactly the same here. Each school has different needs that has to be addressed, and different responses for different things. Of course, you have different communities in every school. So keeping all of that in mind, but as you can see, the #1 priority was the safety of staff and students and getting kids the education that they need, but not sacrificing safety for those things. So I applaud all of our speakers. Thank you for your service to your school districts. I fortunately haven't heard too much from your guys' districts, so you must be doing something right.
Just calling a different attorney, Sam. Don't get excited. There's a lot going on.
Well, that's what KSB Legal is here for. So if you guys or really any board members or superintendents or principals in the chat have questions, just because the Lunch and Learns have ended doesn't mean KASB Legal has gone away. We're still here for you guys, whatever you need. And then again, just drop questions in chat, and we are more than willing to help you. I do see a question from Claudia. Are we getting a lot of questions on teachers leaving in the middle of this semester and how best to handle that? That's a great question, Claudia. I personally haven't heard too many. Now we are rather early in the school year. We're kind of finding our way midway through the semester, depending on your calendar. But I have not heard too many. Most of those questions happened in the initial week or two of school when teachers were upset with the way the district were handling things. When it comes to those things, your contract and the sort of continuing contract law of Kansas, so the professional negotiated agreement, the contract the teacher signed, and the continuing contract law in Kansas are really what's going to guide each and every single one of those scenarios. So keeping that in mind, and also keep in mind that no situation is exactly the same. When it comes to contract issues, when it comes to performance of contract issues, what's going to be most important is knowing the facts of whatever is going on in your situation, and then contacting an attorney that can guide you through that. And KASB is really good at doing that. From Lou Martino, any COVID litigation against districts yet? None that I know of. We have heard whispers of of national education associations whispering and hinting and maybe threatening sort of potential unsafe work environment things, but we have not seen any of that come to fruition. So it's not something we're too concerned with at this point in time, which is good because we don't want Kansas to be the first COVID litigation case. We want it to be somebody else so that we can have that standard and apply it.
Sam, if you can go to the final slide, please. I want to make sure that we give everybody an opportunity to know about some opportunities that are coming up. As I mentioned earlier, our next session that will be called a Lunch and Learn will be October 21st. Those are the third Wednesdays. I want to make sure that you are aware that this Friday there will be an advocacy update, Friday at noon. Once again, there is no cost. Advocacy has some wonderful items that they would like to bring to you as board members and district personnel. But I also want to make sure that you are well aware Dr. Randy Watson has requested some time with board members. Our three speakers might be proud of this. He actually asked if he could use today's time, but I had to turn him down because we had such great speakers. But we did, advocacy has consented to allow him to be on this Friday. So he would like to visit with as many board members as possible. So please consider that. Our first board roundtable is this evening from 6 o'clock to 7:30. Please register if you would like to go. We also have them on October 17th and 14th. Although we do have districts assigned, not necessarily assigned, but if you'd really like to mingle with people from your region, you can look and see identified, but if the date's not good for you, we would definitely hope that you will register at anyone that's most convenient for you. Most of you are aware that our convention will be a different format this year. It will be totally online, so our leadership is working diligently to make that an important and something that will be very beneficial to you. So I want to make sure that we don't have any questions. So Abby, thank you for your little thank you to Jardine. Board members from our leadership for tomorrow, the three that took the time to speak with their colleagues today, I truly thank you for your service, and those of you that have joined us, thank you so much. So with that, we will adjourn, and we sure hope to see you this Friday and at one of the board roundtables. Thank you.